The desert airfield shook under the roar of Apache rotors. A woman bent low, loading rockets into the gunship's pod. To everyone else, she was nobody, just another grease-stained tech. But when her shirt tugged up, a glimpse of black ink froze a decorated major in his tracks. It wasn't random art. It was a code, burned into memory from a classified unit erased from the record. A program the military swore had died years ago. And now, the ghost they buried was standing right there, hidden in plain sight. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The Mojave sun hit the tarmac like fire. Heat waves shimmered across Fort Ravenfield, a base that never slept. Apache rotors chopped the air in the distance. Crews shouted over engines, and dust curled into every corner. Among the noise moved a woman no one truly saw. Elena Ward bent low beside an AH-64 Apache, sliding another belt of 30mm rounds into the chain gun feed. Her hands were steady, precise, almost mechanical. For 4 years, this had been her rhythm. She carried no swagger, no loud voice, no stories, just work. Triple shifts if needed, jobs that required 3 techs. She did alone, and still, no one remembered her face. To most, she was the quiet one in grease-stained coveralls. To the less kind, she was Sergeant Nobody. The nickname stuck. It echoed down hangars when she passed. Tossed like a joke nobody cared to hide. Elena never flinched. She bent, lifted, checked connections, tightened bolts. Her silence was armor. The base stretched wide across the desert rows of hangars, fuel trucks weaving between hardened shelters, pilots swaggering in mirrored shades. Confidence radiated from the flight crews, men and women who believed the war turned on their shoulders. To them, technicians like Elena were shadows in the background. Captain Grant Holloway embodied that arrogance. Clipboard always in hand, voice always at a shout. He treated her like a spare wrench. Ward, fix the misaligned missiles in Hangar 4. Now. He rarely waited for a response. He assumed obedience. Because what else could a nobody give him? She obeyed without complaint. A nod, a step. Another task folded into her day. If he noticed how she carried weight twice her size without faltering, he never said. If he saw how she checked circuits others skipped, he never cared. 2 privates leaned against a fuel truck, watching her lift another crate of shells. Their laughter cut through the noise. She's been here forever, like a ghost. The other smirked. Sergeant Nobody. That's all she is. Elena kept her eyes on the belt of rounds. She heard everything, stored it away, but gave them nothing in return. The casing clinked into place. Her gloves brushed away dust. No reaction, no wasted motion. From the far edge of the tarmac, another pair of eyes tracked her. Major Cole Mercer, commander of the Apache squadron, watched through dark aviators. He was a pilot known for exacting standards, a man who checked every checklist twice. His crews feared him, but respected his precision. Something in Elena's rhythm drew his attention. She moved with deliberate care, never skipping a step, often checking connectors most mechanics ignored. It wasn't the first time he had noticed. For months, he had seen her work in silence, unseen by others, and yet too exact to be ordinary. Still, the squadron brief awaited. Mercer turned reluctantly, filing the thought away, though his gaze lingered a moment longer. Elena knelt by the rocket pod. Sweat traced down her neck, disappearing into the collar of her fatigues. She pulled the panel open, adjusting the configuration of warheads inside. Not the standard loadout, but something different. Alternating high explosive and armor-piercing. No one asked. No one noticed. She reached higher to lock the latch. Her shirt tugged upward, just enough for the sun to strike ink etched into the small of her back. A pattern of precise geometric lines and numbers. At that moment, Mercer's path crossed behind her. He caught the glimpse, a flash of black against sunburned skin. His stride faltered. The clipboard in his hand dipped. His pulse spiked. He knew that symbol. Every pilot in special briefings had been warned about it. Classified geometry, recorded in redacted files, tied to a program erased from official rosters. A unit whispered about only in closed rooms. Project Revenant, declared terminated after a disaster overseas. Every operator presumed dead. And yet the tattoo was here, on the back of a maintenance tech who lived as a nobody on his base. Mercer froze mid-step. For a second, the entire flight line seemed to fade. He stared, memories colliding with classified images he had studied years before. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing beneath the aviators. Elena adjusted the latch, tugged her shirt back down, unaware of the recognition or perhaps entirely aware. Her hands moved calmly to the next check. Eyes steady, breath even. Mercer exhaled slowly. The sun flared across the tarmac. The Apache loomed like a predator waiting to hunt. And the woman beneath it, the one everyone dismissed, suddenly looked like the most dangerous person he had ever seen. He forced his legs to move. Clipboard pressed tight against his chest. To the crews nearby, nothing had changed. But in Mercer's mind, everything had. The ghost on his flight line wasn't just a technician. She was something else, something buried deep inside the military's black files. And she had been hiding in plain sight at Fort Ravenfield all along. Elena tightened the last latch on the Apache's rocket pod. She had shifted the pattern, alternating high explosive with armor piercing. Not standard, but precise for the terrain. The desert cliffs around Daymont Ridge were limestone and concrete mix. Standard loads wasted firepower. Her configuration cut through stone bunkers while still clearing open ground. It looked improvised, but it wasn't. She wiped her hands, stepped aside, and blended back into the line of technicians. No one noticed. No one asked. Hours later, inside the briefing hall, pilots filled the room with chatter and confidence. Digital maps glowed across a wall, lines of flight paths traced in bright colors. Lieutenant Ryan Briggs, youngest of the squadron, leaned back in his chair with a cocky grin. He spotted the diagram of the second Apache's loadout on the screen. What genius messed with our rockets, half he, half penetrators? That's amateur hour. Laughter rippled among a few others. The squadron lived on routine, and routine had no room for strange configurations. At the front, Major Cole Mercer scanned the screen. He paused longer than usual, eyes narrowing at the modified diagram. A murmur spread. Everyone waited for him to demand correction. Instead, Mercer tapped the board with his pen. Keep it. No changes. The laughter died. Briggs sat up straighter. Sir, that's wasted capacity. Mercer's gaze cut to him, sharp enough to silence the room. Consider it tactical flexibility. His tone ended the argument. Confusion filled the air. Since when did Mercer, the pilot famous for discipline, accept deviations but no one dared to push? The briefing moved on. Near the back, a man stood silent. A new face on base, his uniform crisp, insignia polished. Commander Victor Kane, intelligence liaison, newly assigned to Ravenfield. He didn't laugh with the pilots. He didn't glance at the maps, his eyes fixed on Elena, sitting near the technician's bench. Every movement of her hands, every shift in her chair, he catalogued. His stare was sharp, deliberate, unsettling. Elena felt it, though she never looked back. She tapped her pocket where a small receiver hummed, logging stray bursts from the comm systems. For weeks, anomalies had flickered across the spectrum, frequencies masked inside standard transmissions. She had gathered them all. Now Kane's presence made the patterns clearer. The leaks were coming from somewhere higher than field mechanics, someone with access, someone like him. The mission of the day carried urgency. Reports showed insurgents planting charges around the power relay lines at Daymont Ridge. If the ridge went down, half the region would lose supply. Mercer laid out the orders with clipped precision. 4 Apaches. Surveillance first. Weapons hot if targets confirmed. Briggs looked eager, others cautious. Elena listened, storing every word. When the briefing ended, pilots headed to gear up. Elena returned to her workstation, checking missile racks once more. The air reeked of jet fuel, The ground shook with engines powering up. Kane appeared beside her. His shadow fell across the open pod. "Interesting setup you've chosen," he said quietly. Elena didn't look up. "Just following requisitions." He stepped closer, voice smooth, probing. "Funny, I wasn't aware technicians received terrain briefs. Yet here you are, tailoring munitions like a mission planner." Her gloved hands paused for only a heartbeat. "I follow orders." "Sir." Kane studied her face, eyes cold. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then Mercer's voice cut in. "Commander, I need to review the comm protocols before launch." Mercer's tone left no space for refusal. He drew Kane away, not breaking eye contact until Kane turned. Elena closed the latch and exhaled slowly. Her cover had survived another minute. Engines roared louder. The 4 Apaches lifted, rotors chopping the air, dust swirling across the tarmac like storm clouds. Crews cheered them off. Elena did not cheer. She slipped into the bunker, a quiet figure amid officers with headsets and glowing monitors. Inside, screens tracked altitude and thermal signatures. Operators barked updates. Fingers flew across keyboards. Elena stood at a secondary console, supposedly watching mechanical readouts. In reality, her receiver synced, pulling every anomaly Kane had injected into the system. For 10 minutes, the mission ran smooth. Pilots called positions. Thermal scans swept the ridge. Mercer's calm voice filled the room, approaching Vector Charlie, switching to infrared. Then the distortion hit. The feed from Apache 1 flickered, static tearing across the screen. "Targeting reticles drifted off mark. Signal degradation," a comm officer muttered, adjusting dials. Mercer's voice sharpened over the channel. "Control, I'm reading phantom contacts. Systems inconsistent." The room tensed. Lines of code scrolled wrong on the consoles. Another pilot shouted over comms. Stabilizers glitching, losing balance. Suddenly the screen showed rockets firing off target, slamming into empty hillside instead of the suspected tunnels. Shouts filled the bunker. Elena's receiver flared red. A new transmission had just overridden the targeting stream. She pressed the record button. Before she could move, Kane's voice cut through the chaos. "Security detained that woman, now heads turned." He jabbed a finger straight at Elena. She was the last to access the pods. She altered the loadouts. She's sabotaging the mission. 2 military police lunged from the doorway, hands on their weapons. Officers froze, unsure who to believe. Elena didn't run. She held the console, eyes wide with the practiced fear of someone playing a role. Inside, her mind raced. The trap was closing, but not around her. The bunker filled with shouting, alarms, and the whir of failing signals. The MPs closed in. And Kane's accusation hung heavy, a blade ready to fall. The bunker door slammed open. Dust swirled with the rush of hot desert air. Major Cole Mercer stumbled inside, flight suit torn, blood streaming from a cut above his eyebrow. His limp said emergency landing, but his eyes were sharp. The MPs froze, caught between orders and the sight of their squadron commander. Elena stood still, hands raised, her expression calm despite the guns pointed at her. Mercer's voice cut through the chaos. "Release her. Now." The MPs hesitated. Kane's finger jabbed harder toward Elena. "She's the saboteur. Look at the systems. She tampered with them." Mercer pushed forward, planting himself between Elena and the MPs. His chest rose and fell with anger. "That woman is not your culprit. She is not a technician. She is Colonel Elena Spector Ward." Silence hit like a shockwave. Officers stopped mid-command. Screens flickered in the background, static filling the air, but no one breathed. The name carried weight. Spector. A ghost from classified briefings. A figure rumored to have died years ago. Kane recovered first. His voice rose, filled with scorn. "That's impossible. Spector Ward was killed in Yemen. Everyone knows that." Elena lowered her hands slowly. From her pocket, she withdrew a compact black device. Its red light blinked as she pressed playback. Distorted signals filled the room. Layered transmissions captured seconds before the systems failed. Elena adjusted the frequency. The distortion sharpened into a clear signature. She spoke evenly, her voice carrying authority no technician could fake. Interference originated inside this bunker. Exact same bandwidth your console used. Commander. Every head turned toward Kane. His face blanched. Sweat dotted his temple. Fabricated, he shouted, voice cracking. She planted it. She's been setting this up from the start. But his foot shifted backward, edging toward the exit. The MPs noticed. He bolted suddenly, shoving past a console. Papers flew. A chair toppled. Stop him, Mercer barked. The MPs lunged, tackling Kane before he reached the door. His shout turned into a snarl as he struggled, boots scraping the floor. The room erupted in shouts, but Elena moved with quiet purpose. She knelt at her workstation. Fingers found a panel beneath the desk, one no one had ever noticed. With a click, it opened, revealing a compartment lined with foam. From it, she lifted a hardened drive, worn but intact, sealed against time. She set it on the console with a heavy thud. 4 years of surveillance, communications logs, transfer records, coordinates sold to hostile groups, all tied to Kane and his contacts. The room buzzed with disbelief. Officers crowded closer, staring at the black drive as if it were a live explosive. Mercer's face hardened. He looked from Kane, now pinned to the floor, to Elena, standing taller than she ever had in that room. His voice dropped. I knew it. I knew I'd seen you before. Elena's eyes flicked to him. Unreadable. Mercer stepped forward, wiping blood from his brow. His voice reached the bunker staff. 5 years ago, Yemen. My team trapped in a canyon, outnumbered, outgunned, no extraction. They told us we were finished. His jaw clenched, memory thick in his tone. Then a figure came out of the smoke. Alone, fought through the line, took rounds to the chest, and still dragged 9 of us out. We called her a ghost. The record said she died that day. Eyes swung back to Elena. She stood in the glow of the monitors, posture shifting, no longer hiding behind grease-stained silence. Her voice was steady, stripped of disguise. I did die. Officially. That was the cover. Gasps rippled through the bunker. She continued, her gaze sweeping the room. Since that night, my mission has been singular, to stay buried, to find the leak that betrayed us. And today, the mask finally comes off, Kane shouted from the floor, still struggling in the MP's grip. Lies all lies. You're nothing but a mechanic with delusions. Elena's eyes cut to him, cold as steel. You can deny me, but you can't deny the transmissions. Commander, your voice is all over them. Mercer crouched, his face inches from Kane's. I heard her voice in Yemen when she pulled us out. I'd trust it anywhere. You, on the other hand, I never trusted those perfect reports you sent. And now I know why. The MPs hauled Kane to his knees, hands bound tight. His protest turned to guttural curses. Elena slid the hardened drive across the console to the communications chief. Secure this. Triple encrypt. It's evidence of a network larger than just Kane. Contractors, officers, outside channels, 4 years of rot. The chief swallowed hard and nodded. Already moving, Mercer straightened, his voice carrying for all to hear. This woman isn't Sergeant Nobody. She's the reason half this squadron still breathes, and the reason we'll live to fly tomorrow. For the first time. Elena let the mask slip, her stance straightened, her eyes hard, her presence commanding. She no longer fit the role of invisible laborer. She filled the room with rank she had carried in silence. I stayed in the shadows to catch him, she said, nodding toward Kane. Now the shadows aren't needed. The bunker seemed to shrink under the weight of truth. The woman they had ignored for years wasn't a nobody. She was the ghost who had saved men thought lost, and she had returned not for recognition, but to finish the hunt. Morning light spilled across Fort Ravenfield. The air buzzed with unease, the kind that came after secrets cracked open. Inside the main hall, rows of officers filled every seat. Whispered fragments rippled through the crowd, clipped short whenever the doors opened wider. At the front, General Harriet Monroe stood rigid at the podium, her voice, when it came, cut sharp and final. For 4 years, Colonel Elena Ward lived among us as a ghost. She surrendered rank, recognition, and even her name. She chose invisibility so thousands of lives could continue. The hall hushed. Chairs creaked as men and women straightened. Some shifted in shame. The side doors opened. Elena stepped inside. No longer the grease-stained figure ignored on the tarmac. She wore a pressed uniform, insignia glinting under fluorescent light. Her hair, once hidden under a cap, was neat and severe. The silence thickened as she walked to the front. Boots tapped steady, unhurried, impossible to look away from. Captain Grant Holloway, the man who had barked orders at her like she was a tool, dropped his eyes. His jaw tightened, guilt plain. Two privates and the back boys who once mocked her as Sergeant Nobody snapped to rigid attention. Their faces flushed. "Colonel, ma'am," one stammered. "We apologize for our disrespect." Elena's gaze held theirs for a long second. Then she returned their salute. "Consider it a lesson. Never underestimate the uniform anyone wears." General Monroe gestured to the MPs. Victor Kane was dragged through the hall, wrists bound. His once perfect composure cracked, lips pale, eyes darting. He passed within feet of Elena, but she did not spare him more than a glance. The drive she had uncovered, the weight of 4 years of evidence rested in her hands. She placed it into Monroe's grasp. "Everything is here. The network, the transfers, the voices. His treachery won't reach another soldier." The general nodded, voice low. "You've done what no one else could." That afternoon, a small ceremony took place on the edge of the parade ground. No fanfare, no banners, just soldiers in formation and a table draped in the flag. Monroe lifted a case. Inside lay Elena's insignia, stripped from her record years ago, now restored. A medal rested beside it, her original commendation, once given, then locked away under false reports of her death. The general pinned the insignia back to her uniform. Applause was absent. Instead, the silence was heavy with respect. Elena stood motionless, face unreadable. Only her eyes flickered, catching the memory of comrades who never came home. Later, in the quiet of the hangar, Mercer found her. His bandages were fresh, his limp still visible, but his eyes were steady. He lowered his voice. 4 years of being ignored. 4 years of carrying everyone's contempt. How did you endure it? Elena closed the case, holding her medal, fingers brushing the cold metal. What mattered were the lives still flying today, not what they thought of me. Mercer studied her face, searching for cracks. He found none. Only resolve. The day slipped into evening. Orders arrived. Colonel Ward's cover was broken. Her time at Ravenfield was over. At dawn, transport engines warmed on the runway. A single duffel sat at Elena's feet. Her posture was straight, her eyes calm. The entire Apache squadron lined the tarmac, not ordered, but drawn. Pilots, crew chiefs, mechanics all stood shoulder to shoulder. No cheers, no music, just a silent row of raised hands. A farewell that spoke louder than noise. Elena moved past them, acknowledging with the briefest nods. To most, she had been invisible. Now, they saw her clearly, and the weight of that vision settled heavy on every chest. At the bottom of the transport's ramp, Mercer waited. He held out her clearance papers. She accepted. But with them, she pressed a small envelope into his palm. "Some things still need attention." Her voice was quiet, but it carried. The engines thundered louder. Dust kicked up around them. Elena climbed the ramp without looking back. Mercer tore the envelope open as the plane began to roll. Inside lay a medal, tarnished and battered, once belonging to a comrade lost in Yemen. Alongside it were coordinates written in her hand. At the bottom, a single line, "Some ghosts never rest." Mercer looked up. The plane lifted, banking east. He held the medal tight, eyes following the shrinking silhouette against the dawn sky. Inside the transport, Elena settled into a window seat. The base she had haunted for years blurred beneath the clouds. Her cover was finished, her mission complete. Yet a new file already rested in her lap. Sealed orders. Another shadow to chase, another betrayal to uncover. She opened the folder, eyes scanning details with the same calm precision she had carried since the first day she stepped onto Ravenfield. Recognition wasn't why she served. Comfort wasn't why she endured. She served so others never had to know the battles fought for them in silence. As the clouds parted and the desert faded, Colonel Elena Specter Ward closed the folder and leaned back. Her story at Ravenfield had ended. The next mission had already begun. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.